see you last night, Greg.
Great to see you. We had a great time last night, right?
Oh, hell yeah. We're going to have any more dance parties tonight.
Yeah, we are going to have another one tonight. And then on Monday is the Christmas party.
I'm going to be on both of them tonight.
Awesome. Good. Well, I'm glad. All right, so we'll give it another minute. We're just getting onto YouTube here. That's loading up, and then we'll get everything started. Just make sure my ducks are in a row in front of me. All right, so I'm going to mute everyone except for Matt, and then I'll mute myself once I introduce Matt, just so that we have a nice, clean recording here.
Okay, so should I wait until the end then for questions and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll give that once we get started. So we'll edit this all out. But basically, people can put questions into the chat, and you can answer them as you see fit. You can save it till the end, or you can answer them in between. Also, once we get to the question answer period, we can continue on with chat, or I'll jump on and either read them or have my own questions, and then we can open up the floor.
Okay,
so
awesome.
we'll sort of play it by ear until we get there.
Before I start even, Bob, what's Switchy?
Switchy is a local beverage. Have you heard of Switchel? An old thing from, gosh, 1700s is when it started, which is just a mixture of like vinegar and water and maple syrup and stuff. Anyway, someone made something called Switchy, which is a version of it made with lime juice and ginger instead. And they're from Norwich. Yeah, look for it somewhere. It's in this tall red can.
I'm pulling it up here. We'll do a little product placement because we are talking about Vermont creativity here.
Yeah.
But no, this is awesome.
That stuff is, oh man, it's an elixir.
I gotta try it. Sparkling lime and William ginger. Sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
It certainly is.
Corinna Switchy. I also like the website just being like, you know, really like it. And truly like then the package design here is dope.
Yeah. It catches your eye, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, awesome. What do you think? Should I start up?
Yeah, let's get. I'll introduce first. So if you want to lose that screen first, and get us back to unsharing. Let's see. Speaker view, standard. There we are. Perfect. All right, give me 1 second. Let me do some maintenance, and then we're good to go.
Sounds good.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is DJ Craig Mitchell of Big Heavy World, and I'm so excited for Art Mosh 1.0, day number 2. Yesterday was a lot of fun and very informative. I learned a lot from a few different folks who presented, and you'll be able to see those again later on, as we said yesterday, via YouTube. You'll be able to watch it or listen to them also on Big Heavy World. We'll let you know when those come up. And I'm so excited about today. But before we get started, I want to remind you that we at Big Heavy World, as citizens of the United States and the state of Vermont, would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the occupied, unceded Seeds territory of the Abenaki people. I remind you again that this is being recorded, and hopefully everyone's okay with that. Our guest today will be Matt Bingeno. He's formerly of, or still of, the band Night Protocol. He has a brand new project he's doing, and I hope I can say this correctly, Vedika and Density.
Density, yeah.
Density. Ah, there we go. Vedika and Density. There we go. I was trying to be all fancy with it. So he's going to be doing a discussion as a DJ, a musician, a producer, videographer, engineer, and teacher, and what's needed for a successful stream from sound to audio, from sound to video, I'm sorry. So with that said, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Matt Bingeno. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm stoked to be here. And hopefully what I can share, I think I kind of was making some visuals up this morning and looked back in these and realized I think I'm saying a multitude of things here all at once. But hopefully maybe there's at least one point that might stick out with you. And, you know, at any point, please do offer any questions in the chat. And my big point from all of this is about communication. So this is kind of a starting point, but I really hope that there's more communication beyond this. So let me share this screen, double check everything's looking good here too. I want to still be able to see my chat. Let me see, active speaker video. I think what's weird with Zoom versus Google Meets is that the chat box does go away. Let me see if I can get that back. Okay. Well, how are we gonna fix that? Okay. Oh, here it is. Well, just do let me know. Don't be afraid to bring up any. Oh, here it is. Okay. Awesome. Now I got it. Do feel free though to voice into if you have any thoughts throughout all this. But I'm honored to be here, and I just kind of want to share some ideas, perspectives, and thoughts because I think I kind of have a unique viewpoint in a lot of this because I take on a few different roles. So what I want to share with you, and I'm sorry I missed yesterday's presentation, but I just kind of wanted to share a little bit about this world of live streaming. And, you know, in this year of 2020, what does it mean to be a creative, and what does it mean to make media art nowadays? Because I think that's changed in ways that we didn't expect, obviously, and in ways that we really need to be aware of. And what I love about this series is we're thinking to the future. So I'm definitely offering some ideas about what's going on now, but I'm hoping that into the future we can be a little more cognizant of the reality of changes and the reality of our evolving world, especially when that's intensified by something like a pandemic. Oops, I went to my last slide. So who am I? My name is Matthew Bingino. I am a media artist, and in the chat right now, I'll drop my website in case you want to check it out. Just to see the stuff I do and create. And I'll show you a little bit of that here, just, you know, not to be too vain, but just to kind of speak to what I do. My main thing is creating music. I'm a music producer and DJ. Kind of record a lot out of my home studio as well as my studio downtown. Over the years, I've done a lot of different projects. My latest thing is something called Vetica and Density, where I'm making music with my partner Amanda. I'm in a Burlington band where we play some retro 80s style music called Night Protocol. I've also done lots of performances under the name DJ Vu. I was in a dark kind of band called Necromancer, and way back in the day, I was in a soul hip hop band called Entendre. So I've been playing music for so many years. Tried to be more and more a part of the Burlington, Vermont music scene, and that's really given me so much purpose and meaning over the years. Also, I'm a filmmaker. Done all different types of filmmaking. Most of the stuff I end up doing is very DIY, where I'm working myself just to make a production. Made a bunch of music videos. Speaking of which, I have a few really cool new music videos to the Big Heavy World crew I'd love to send, because I was checking out that page of Vermont music videos. Found a bunch of videos I'd never seen, which is amazing. But I also have a few others that I'd love to share out of some Vermont bands I've made that were really fun. Done music videos, commercial shoots, which I'm going to talk about in a second, has become a big thing this year. Also have done weddings, but also I've worked on a camera department crew, several camera department crews, especially a lot of productions, a lot of friends who have gone through programs like Champlain and really made really great film productions. I'm always honored to work on those. But a lot of what I'll talk about today is my work as a DIY filmmaker. Also a photographer. You know, I think every filmmaker, you know, the root of what they do is photography. I don't know, I just picked a few random photos. Most of these are from this past year. And this year, actually, despite how I'm going to talk about how a lot of these other things have been heavily affected, photography's actually been pretty awesome this year. I've kind of had a little more time to get out and venture, and that really hasn't changed as much. But I do a lot of landscape work, portraits. I love shooting shows events. That part has kind of changed this year. And I really love a lot of drone aerial work. So I've been doing a bunch of photography. If you live in Burlington, I've been working with Max Tracy's campaign and helping him with a lot of Burlington photography and stuff for him. So if you got anything in your mailbox this year, those are some photos I shot with Max. And it's been cool doing photography that goes beyond just kind of being something fun just to share out online, to start to being something professional and things that can be used for all different types of statements and to be used in other ways. But really, this past year, kind of by accident, I've taken on, and Craig, I had to throw a quick selfie in with you here, taken on the role of doing live stream production. And I've been doing some larger productions, some smaller ones, and just luckily been able to start to work with some larger artists on this, and really seeing that this whole world of live streaming is exciting, challenging, and really is something, though, that we need to be aware of, because it's changing it's changing the ways that we communicate. And that's what I'm going to kind of talk about here today. Also, I am a digital media arts instructor. So my main thing is each day I teach at the Central Vermont Career Center. I'm going to drop in the chat our school website in case you want to check it out. But more specifically, this is what I do with students. Digitalmediaarts.com. And really, I think I have to put HTTPS for those, so you might have to copy paste those web addresses I just put in the chat. But really, my role is to instruct usually around 20 Central Vermont area students in digital media arts. So I teach them photography, graphic design, filmmaking, and music sound production, and some animation motion graphics. And I love it. It's an amazing job. It's a demanding job, but it's so exciting. And, the kids are with us all day, all year. So we really form a pretty tight bond and relationship, and they have to work to get into the program. They have to apply. So they have to be passionate artists themselves and want to create more into the future. So it's really been inspiring for me, but also just like I think maybe people who do art full time, it's amplified a lot of the feelings I'm going to share today because, I have my own feelings and the things that I create, but my job is to every day kind of create with students and inspire them to be creative. So this year with its challenges, it's become particularly interesting being a teacher and seeing how this has changed young creatives as well. So that's kind of what I want to share a little bit in this whole process. And I'll talk more about how I've adapted my education, not only for remote learning, but to prepare young people for the new world of media arts. Oops, wrong chat here, sorry. So I don't know, just last little personal thought before I dive into some things I think can help everyone. I just, this morning and sitting down thinking about this, I was thinking about what has this year really done? How has it changed my life? It has changed my life. Oh, and by the way, I'm including some random photos, most of them shot this year on the side of these slides here. But the ways that this year has changed my life, a lot more self-reliance. I think we all have that. And I think that's a big change in the world of art, where we are always like, get out in there and collaborate more. And kind of for better, for worse, we've all learned to be a little more self-reliant. And I don't know if that's always a good thing. Reshaping my thought processes of time. I know I'm maybe preaching to the choir here with this one, but we always think about, if I had more time, I would create this, or if I had more time, I would learn how to go do that. And it's weird this year for a lot of people like myself, now you have the time. And what do we do with that? Time is not something it isn't a fuel for creativity. It isn't like the only thing we need to light that fire of progressing and growing. So I've definitely changed the way I've thought about time and realized that that is not actually the thing that is needed to help us be creative. For me, I've really stopped in all of the things I create and focused more on the process, not the product. In the past, it's always been this mad dash of what's the product, get it out there, do it ASAP. And now I'm really stopping to think about the process itself. And along with that, kind of just a new understanding of really how inspiration is an important factor. Inspiration in any type of art, even if you're making a client a video about their business, you as a filmmaker need to be inspired. You need to think about that. And so definitely realizing that even if you're working to capture something else, your own level of inspiration and your own drive to create and tell stories can be heavily affected by the world around you. And also I've found this self-acceptance that work doesn't always translate to outcome in the art world. I've been like, now I have the time, I'm going to spend the extra bit of time editing this. And I think it's kind of alarming when you see like, no, just, the amount of time you put in does not directly translate to outcome. And I don't think that's new for 2020, but it's definitely amplified. So those are just some personal thoughts. Again, please drop anything in the chat too if you disagree or have any things you want to share. And so just thinking, I told my students I was going to do a little presentation and I might show this to them later. And they're like, yeah, show photos and stuff. I hope you check out our website and see some of their work because it's amazing. But definitely thinking about this past year and how it's changed my perspective as a media art teacher. I think, we're talking about art in general here, and a lot of our focus right now is on adults, not young people. But young people are the future. They are really the ones who are going to be the audiences for a lot of what we create and are going to be coming into the roles that we are putting in place for them. So I think it's really important just to stop and discuss that, because late high school years are really formative. I think a lot of when we think about the challenges in education right now, we think about like little kids and learning their foundational like math and literacy skills, and that's very important, obviously. But I think there's a real lasting effect when because I work with high school juniors and seniors, to really truly lose your high school junior and senior year. And my school has been closed. We're getting back to in-person in 2021, but still won't have a lot of things like contests, like a prom, all sorts of stuff like that. And so really just seeing that high school years are critically formative. A year missing in the life of a teenager is way heavier than a year maybe missed as a 30-something-year-old or 40 or 50-something-year-old. Stress, anxiety, and depression have been amplified. I know I'm probably not news here, but really it's been a struggle, and it's hard to stop and think about art sometimes when you have that in your students. The really interesting thing I've seen is apathy. Teenagers like care about some things more than other things, so apathy is a very common thing. But I think there's just kind of a danger to the ways apathy is manifested. It's no longer like, oh, I don't want to do class because I want to just go do video games. It's kind of become, I don't want to participate in school because I don't believe in school or myself anymore. And so I think that's a really scary and challenging thing. Are the arts in jeopardy? That's a really great question. I think so. I'm going to get to that in just a second. I really think that because of the state of limited schedules, kids are only getting their core curriculum stuff. I'm really lucky, and I think my students are lucky because we're in a career tech school. So they've applied and they're with me all year, and I'm able to give them their academics in addition to, or really as a piggyback onto, a full year of learning media art, which they're all passionate about. But I really think arts are in jeopardy. And because they're less focused on right now, kids are really feeling just the negative effects of school. And I asked my students, I collected quotes for a presentation I gave earlier this week. And the most interesting thing, they were like, I've been giving them what I think are really exciting, cool projects, making weird stuff in Photoshop and all over. But it's been really interesting asking kids where I'm like, oh, use Photoshop to make something surreal out of this space. And a lot of my students just are like, I cannot get myself to even build the assets to make something creative in nothing but my room. And really, it's hard to try and get kids to find that inspiration to be creative when you have nothing but your room, because that's all some kids have in their world right now. So that's definitely a factor that I've been feeling. Students are feeling the less optimistic about their planning. And a lot of us here are, especially in Vermont and Burlington, colleges are a big part of our town, a big part of our future. And I'm really seeing that the changes with colleges are going to be a long lasting one and something that's going to affect us. Most of my students, usually I have about half my class have a college plan. This year, I think maybe so far one of my students has a college plan, just because they can't think about what's going to happen next week, much less next month or next year. So that lack of planning for the future, I think, is heavily affected. I think that just in general, I'm just throwing out there, a lot of schools are putting out kind of a message that remote learning, oh, it's working, we're making the most of it. Cheers, bravo, teachers. And that's great. But I'm here as a teacher saying it's not always really working. Really, we are sugarcoating it to make it work, but that's the message coming from administrators. Students, really, the big resounding thing is they didn't sign up for this, and a lot of them just weren't really ready for doing classes online. That's something that we're usually morally and mentally ready for as adults, but for young people, I think something that you're really not ready for and something that they didn't really ask for. But I really do applaud my students who have been persevering, and I applaud my coworkers and my administrators We've been doing a great job, but I just want to quickly, in my role as a teacher, share some thoughts that this year my life has changed and my life as a teacher has changed. And we should just be ready for that as artists, because these are future artists that hopefully will be working with all of us soon. So beyond my work as a teacher, I'm a freelance artist. I produce a lot of different content, like I shared before, film productions and this live streaming stuff. So what I've seen in my offerings as a freelance producer, increased demand for film. I think this has been, it's pretty clear to everybody that now as a local business, you can't share your stuff just with a few nice photos on a Facebook page. You need to have actually films, and our social media platforms are actually pushing that now. They want you to create content, and they want it to be visual, and they want it to be experiential, and they want all these things. And very few Vermont companies are offering, like especially media companies, are offering really accessible filmmaking. There are a lot of great media production companies around Vermont. Truly, there's so many. A lot of them, though, are always showcasing their big clients, like, oh, look at us, we worked with so-and-so, we worked with like Coca-Cola, we worked with Nike, and that's great. There's very little in Vermont approachability in the media art community, and that's something why I think purposefully I've really wanted to, in my role, stay authentic and organic. And I am your neighbor, I'm a person, and I'm somebody who loves being creative. And I think that's something that is important to support, is not just the big companies who are trying to work with corporate entities, but Vermont companies who offer creative solutions to help local companies in a more small, authentic, organic way. Something else I'm seeing, some great questions here. Are musicians taking more advantage of people like yourself and skill sets more than before? Yeah, I think so. I think musicians especially, yeah, I'm definitely feeling that a lot. And what's cool, which I'll talk about in a second, is I've actually, maybe because of my adapting to live streaming, I've gotten some bigger gigs, worked with some bigger clients and some bigger acts, not especially Craig, but even beyond Craig, some other people as well. So I'll get to that maybe in just a second. But one thing that I have noticed, and this is true for musicians and companies, is a lot of the current productions, though, are being done to retain legitimacy. I don't feel like a lot of the current productions I've been working on this year are always like, this is exactly what we wanted to create, let's create it. A lot of people are like, oh, this year sucks, let's make something so people don't forget about us. And that's fine too, that's a great thing, but I'm noticing that as a trend, and I think that's where a lot of media this year has not felt as authentic because of that. And the other thing, just I'm noticing, social media is already, we're in the late stages, I think, of social media. And, I think there's going to be a revolution of that. But, I think they're great productions. Like, I really loved that recent Netflix documentary about social media and its effect. I think we're seeing some real negative implications of social media. And especially this year, when social media has become one of our only ways to communicate, creates a lot of negativity with the ways we think about media and communication. So it's kind of been a challenging year for artists all around. So my main purpose here today, sorry for blabbing about all the rest, is talk about live streaming. Live streaming is exciting and awesome, but also it's really fun to put together a live stream production, but also it's definitely not something that I love. Live streaming is, honestly, in my opinion, feel free to disagree, it's an extremely inauthentic, that might be incorrect. It's not the most authentic way of sharing art. Art is meant to be something that's experienced. And even if you're making digital art, I don't think there's many artists who really make stuff that is only meant to be experienced from a screen, maybe some types of art. And so that's why live streaming, I really don't think it will ever replace real events, real ways of sharing our art, but it's the best we have right now. And it still is a great way to maintain connection to audiences, but it has to be done authentically. And so that's maybe the point that I wanted to make in this, is just because you can live stream doesn't mean that that's the perfect way to get your message out. It needs to be authentic. So I'm going to offer some ideas for that. And I also think artists shouldn't feel obliged to do it. It's okay to wait through this process. like my band Night Protocol, we have the ability to live stream anytime. We could do it right now. We have all the equipment, but it's kind of a thing where we're like, is this something we want to do right now? Are we doing it because we have a product we want to create, or we just kind of want to show, hey, we're still here? And that's fine. That's great if you want to say, hey, we're still here. But if live streaming isn't something that you feel like is a product you want to create, I don't think we should make that an expectation for artists. Live streams feel like a lifeboat. That's a really great point. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. It's a lifeboat, and it's one that, you know, if we're on a lifeboat, hopefully it's not going to sink. So offer some ideas around that. Live streaming, though, it's tough. Of all the stuff I've studied, media art, live streaming is like kind of the most hard to understand. If you like Google how to live stream, you're literally going to get 50,000 pages, and they're all going to tell you different things. There might be a few continuities, and there are a few things I've picked up on, and I'm going to share those in a minute. But it's really not a format of media that is A plus B equals C. And along with that, even if you get your technical side down, it needs to be effective to your audience. And so that's why I've seen live streams need to be more than just these single shot communication pieces. Right now I'm doing that. And right now you might even be like, okay, it's hard to watch this Matt guy talk, and now I want to go do other things. And that's fine. That's how it should be, because the human brain doesn't get the stimuli it expects for an intimate communication when it's presented from a screen. We just don't. And so our brains constantly crave, oh, I need more. And that's why this form of communication, it works. It's a lifeboat, but it's definitely not a boat that you want to put all your stock in and rush out to sea with. So the only way I think to engage with this live streaming world is to enliven the production with viewpoints, graphics, and to really make it an authentic communication. So that's maybe my point here for any artist, is make live streaming a communication. Give your audience more. Along with that, though, platforms and music is a big part of this. And this is like, it's changing every day. Copyright law and music licensing, it hasn't really caught up with the age of live streaming. Even for me, like as a DJ, I have a few songs I've produced over the years that I've put out through like CD Baby. And I've literally been DJing parts of my songs and had my own stream like cut off because it said, you are doing produced content. I'm like, that's my own content. It's just really the ways that live streams are flagged and being checked for content and music copyrights and all the rest. It's pretty flawed. And you know, I understand that this is new technology and it's something that the legal world needs to catch up with. But really, the problem is it's kind of a terrible feeling as a DJ when you are trying to perform something and you're not really doing it for profit. You're not doing it to rip off an artist. In fact, you're actually maybe hoping to support an artist by sharing some of their music and the ways you're remixing. It's a pretty awful feeling when you've produced a mix and it gets taken down, or you're even worse, like while you're doing it, gets shut off. So that's why live streaming's got its real challenges, especially for musicians. Is there a way to flag your own stuff? So that's a great question in the chat here. Yes, there are some ways, and that's why I think there are some better platforms to use. I'm really excited, and Craig Mitchell and I have talked a lot about this, about like Mixcloud Live is a really great way for musicians to share stuff, because it's really not going to be flagged like YouTube or Facebook would, where they just look for any copywritten music and then might flag it to take it down. YouTube's not awful. YouTube usually just tries to identify the music, and then certain record labels might have their music be blocked. Facebook's a real challenging one I've found. I've been like minutes into a really nice Facebook production, just immediately, nope, you're cut off just because it flags one song that's not your own. Twitch kind of initially had some partnerships with BMI that I'm aware of that made it a little bit better for music. And I've actually, some of my favorite music streams I've seen this year have been via Twitch. I've been making some of my own. Twitch, though, is definitely designed for gaming. And lately, they've put out some statements saying they really cannot support a lot of music streaming stuff. So it's a challenge, and it can be a really terrible feeling as a DJ to kind of get cut off when you're doing something that would have been fine in person. Like, oh, I could do this at a club in front of 800 people, but I can't do this here online for 20 of my friends. It's a weird feeling. So the other day, I was helping this artist named Simmel from Seattle. produce a live stream. It was awesome. It was really fun. It was called Simmel's Sad Christmas. If you want to check it out. And it was really cool because we did it live. It was a huge challenge, like to actually coordinate it live. And it was really exciting because we were on Amazon Music's Twitch page and we were streaming right after the Foo Fighters. And it was kind of like, oh my God, the Foo Fighters are finishing up their stuff. And like, it was cool. There were like thousands of people like kind of on the channel watching. And Foo Fighters, awesome. Obviously, I love Foo Fighters. Crazy big production. Lights, they were still on a stage, you know, like all this stuff. They had Lil Nas X even like hosting the show all dressed up. And it was awesome. Not a single moment of it was live. It was pre-recorded probably weeks before. It was carefully edited. It had lighting. It was all made to look like this big, grandiose production, almost like you're actually at a show. And it was really interesting jumping on after the Foo Fighters with our very live stream. And I think that's something that I'm seeing a trend a lot now, is that a lot of these big live streams are not authentic. They're being completely pre-recorded and simply somebody's pressing go. And for some people, that's fine. But ultimately, their way that they're engaging that is no different from them going to watch a YouTube video. And some people might actually think it's live. I don't think many people are being fooled to think that at that very moment, the Foo Fighters are up on the stage playing that for them from Los Angeles or something like that. Maybe. But I think one of the problems with a lot of live streaming now is it's not very authentic. It's being just pre-recorded, and the live stream just means that they are premiering a video. And that can work, and that's great. But I think that generally creates a lot of negativity around live streaming, where people go on and it isn't like being at a concert. It is just like the same things we've been able to see on YouTube in the past. And what was cool with Simmel was that there was an audience connection piece. I noticed that the Foo Fighters, the chat was just like very generic comments. Versus with Simmel, when I jumped on with him and he was totally live, people were asking direct questions. He was communicating with them. He got silly with them, and people were much more active in the chat. The critical element in any type of live streaming is engagement. And so for a true live stream, I just really think personally as an artist, and something I try and create and think Vermont artists should think about, creating things that are truly live. The audience needs to be empowered. So how do artists find me? That one was just working on a previous production. Actually, that one I'd worked on a previous production with Scott Barber, who's another amazing Vermont filmmaker. And he had done a live stream with Guster, and the manager of Guster also managed Simmel, and contacted me after the Guster stream. And so I've been lucky just by getting to know people. That's it. You know, that's the media art world, sometimes just knowing people. And luckily this year, I've gotten to know a few people, and I'm so grateful for those connections and so thankful for that. But I like when my students ask, how do we get into this? All I can tell them is produce content and network. If anybody has any ideas about that, I'd love to know more. But I really do think that's something I've seen in the industry, is a live stream. Is it live or is it pre-recorded? And those big ones that are pre-recorded, it makes your live stream feel less legitimate, because, you know, they have this big grandiose production. And so when you do yours and you want it to be live, you're still limited when you do something live. You know, you have to make it in the end, pipe it into a streamable feed. So that's why sometimes it's hard when you are doing it authentically and live to make it feel as interesting as those artists who pre-recorded a big grandiose production. So my last few thoughts here, and really want to open up for questions. Here in Vermont, I think there's so much support, especially with Big Heavy World, and it's been amazing. I don't know why I haven't made more connection use of it like I did when I was very young, and like teenage, like hardcore band years, and now seeing all stuff Big Heavy World's been doing. I think that's great, and I think, you know, there needs to be greater support of that and more of that. I think part of what Big Heavy World does, it provides opportunity. And they're not the only one too. There are so many other opportunities for artists to do this type of work, to experiment with new types of ways of communicating. And I think there just needs to be more. There aren't many guides for artists that really effectively say, hey, here's how you live stream, especially when it's somebody in your state, like not just somebody off the other side of the world talking about random pieces of gear. So I think some very stripped down, authentic, meaningful ideas about ways you can do a live stream yourself would be a great thing. I know some of those are out there already, but I personally, as an artist, when I was just getting started in this live streaming stuff, I had trouble finding that. I really think that there should be more equipment available for people to rent out and borrow. I do think some companies and businesses have been doing a great job of adapting and offering this as a service, and that's great. And you know, like I can think about, like, I love what Robot Dog Studio has been doing. They've been offering these awesome live streams for bands, just come right in, ready to go, beautiful sound and picture. That stuff is awesome. But also, you know, that's a professional route. I think it should be something that bands and musicians and artists should be able to do for smaller productions too. So it'd be really nice to have maybe more of our community media organizations having even more stuff that can be rented and borrowed, and really having it in a kit dedicated to live stream. And I think even more platforms to share. Like, I love what Big Heavy, and I got to do one of these just this past week. It was like Rocket Shop over at Big Heavy World. More platforms that we have consistent sharing of work. A couple years ago, I set up a podcast live streaming thing. We called it Red Television, and it was kind of designed around that. I know there's been like Noise Ordinance and some great organizations like that that offer a consistent way of looking at live streams, and not just that you happen to capture a local band saying, hey, we're going to go live stream. So that stuff would be great to have more of. And I guess, you know, I was thinking, anybody watching this, if you want to get into live streaming, the essential thing, again, is having that live element. So I think you should try and do it live. And I think having something to enliven the production where it's more than just you and your single camera. There's so many different devices out there that do all sorts of things. The best one I can recommend is Blackmagic, and their stuff is pretty flawed. I'm going to straight up say it. Sorry, Blackmagic. Their stuff is not extremely user-friendly, but for the price and what it does, it is some of the best equipment. And the one that I think is the most user-friendly is the Blackmagic A10 Mini, which is just a device that can switch 4 camera angles connected through HDMI. And so technically, yeah, you could get an adapter to do HDMI out of your phone. But just thinking, like, if I had to get the simplest but most effective low budget live streaming setup, I would use OBS, which is a free streaming software, which I can show you after this. It's a really great one. It's gotten way better over the years, and God bless the whole team that put that together. Platforms like YouTube and Twitch are pretty darn easy. It's kind of hard not to see what to do, grab your stream key, paste it in, and be able to share your stuff out. So Blackmagic really do make good video devices. Some of them are complicated, but the A10 Mini is great. Having a separate audio device, I think, is a really important investment. A lot of artists are ultimately going into like a headphone jack. And I think that you really, even though you're just streaming it, it's important for musicians to have good quality sound. So even something as simple as like Tascam make a $100 interface that I've used in the past and really like. It's got stereo sound. And cameras, I know a lot of people are thinking to their phones, and phones have amazing cameras now, but getting a camera that is kind of separate so you can really move it around, mount it on a tripod. Heck, these Canon Vixia cameras are under $200 now, and they have clean HDMI out. So I don't know, I'm thinking for like, you know, $1,300, including like the laptop, which is really your essential element, you could have a pretty strong live stream. And just some general suggestions for people into the future. I think, you know, if this is going to be the way we're communicating for a while, think about ways to make it even more powerful. If you're doing something on Zoom, try this amazing feature through OBS where you can have virtual audio and video cables where you can actually push a live stream into Zoom. It's really, really cool. There's something called a Blackmagic Intensity Shuttle. I've got one of them right over here. Best $100 I ever spent. And I know $100 still $100, but this allows you to convert things like HDMI signals into USB. so helpful because then I do this with my students. So it's more than just a built-in dash cam. It's like a nice professional looking camera. And when you do a stream like this, require engagement. Don't just go around and have people introduce themselves. Always think about ways in these virtual platforms that we can share ideas. I love doing like Jackbox games with kids, jam boards, anything to get things going. I'm part of a group called like Skills USA, where we have a CTE competition across the whole state. And we just did a live stream conference the other week, and we made the production really pretty and beautiful. Kids didn't really care about that, but what they cared about was the stuff that was going on in the chat, the ways that we asked them to participate. So participation is huge. My last thought, Vermont education is lacking in applicable technology education. We used to have like computer class. It was like just like going to home ec and health class. Most schools don't really have that anymore. It's just kind of assumed that that's embedded. Why the heck is it like that? These computer classes shouldn't be called like, for me, it was we would do Mavis Beacon and learn how to type. I actually really like that class. But why don't we have more modern classes that teach people about these things? Because we're trying to prepare people for the future. Doesn't matter what industry, what career kids get into, they need these skills. We're seeing that adults don't have these skills. So why are we not training our kids to have them? And I know that beyond my class, when we work with other classes and we help them prepare a presentation, it is like, oh, how do I do this? Why have we taken away that from education? And so I think that's something that in the young people's world would be a big help. And for the adult world, looking at media art no longer is just a vanity. It's a demand of the modern world. It's not just something that you can have one person that in your circle that that can help out with stuff. Seeing that it's not just something that's done for techie, nerdy people. It's kind of been something that's more in demand and more ingrained into what we are experiencing. So I hope to work together with more people. I think this year we're all in our little bubbles. Reaching out is a great way to do that. Making solid plans for when the world gets better has been a great thing to do. Encouraging us to provide methods of engagement and to rethink the way that we consume media. And I hope that everybody looks to art in times of need. So I know we got a small crew here, but for anybody that sees this, my name is Matthew Bingeno. We'll provide some links there. Let's collaborate. Let me know if I can help. Something I challenge people to do if you see this, do something like share out the work of a local artist, a musician, a filmmaker, a photographer. Share out their work and be like, hey, I nominate this person. I want to share their work and pass it on. That's something I'm going to do right after this because I just think that'd be a fun thing to do. Let's work together, in a safe way. We're definitely all quarantining and trying to be safe as possible right now. But if we can do it safely, and if you feel safe with that, come live stream. I have a studio in downtown Burlington. I would love to help you live stream. It's ready to go anytime. If you don't have the money to pay for it, no worries. Let's figure it out. And, again, I don't really have set rates for this type of stuff. I do it because I'm passionate about it. And if you're passionate about something, I'd love to help you with that. So that's what I wanted to share. Sorry for blabbing so much, and I'd love to open up for questions.
That was perfect, Matt. Thank you so much. This is Craig, by the way, everybody. I have a few questions. I love what you said about VCam, or something like VCam, where people can rent or borrow stuff. We talked a lot about that yesterday, but I think that's really, really important for folks. And do you think that's a way for folks to learn from using that equipment, or is it better to DIY your video? Or both?
I think both. Yeah, definitely both. I think, and I know VCam there are amazing people there. I would love to get more connected with VCam and do more. So that's something I would love to do that. And so I'm not sure exactly about what equipment they do have and the programs they have. I have such respect for what they do, but I would say that they should, if they do have equipment available related to live streaming and any courses, get that word out as much as possible. Because, I know a lot of artists may not know about VCam, may not know about Big Heavy World, may not know about these things. So I think any ways that we can share those messages, because sometimes people don't go looking for what they need. Sometimes you need to get it to them. And so that's something a lot of artists, I think, feel like I don't know how to live stream, I don't know this, and they're not going to know what to search online or where to go. So being in everybody's face about that and saying, hey, you know, this is a way that you can stay creative. I do really want to quickly circle back to the point though, not every artist should feel required to live stream. If it doesn't fit with your artistic vision, and if it isn't something that helps you further, if you're doing it just to stay legitimate right now, I don't think any artist should feel forced to live stream.
There you go. I like that. Shirley Reed just wants to let you know that she would like to watch this again to get more clear about what you're saying. Not necessarily that you weren't clear, but to refresh your memory.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm glad this is being recorded, and you know, definitely can share out the recorded version.
Jim Lockridge, what's the best USB microphone plug and play-ish for live acoustic music?
Ooh, that's a good one, James. I would say so with my students. So also when it's like a USB plug and play, you're also thinking about affordability because there's a pretty big range in that. Honestly, with a lot of my students and what we have at my school is we are giving out blue microphones. Those blue like Snowball and the Yeti microphones, they're pretty decent for what they can do to capture something like just the feeling of being in a room. You're really right though. Audio is the big one. It's pretty easy to live stream picture. Like, you know, you could do it right now from your phone with free apps. It's pretty darn easy. And I do think you should enliven your visual performance, which is a lot of what I've been talking about here. But audio is the one that usually gets forgotten, and the one that a lot of musicians themselves even are so focused on how do I look here and how will people view this that they may not think about the sound incorporated. So a USB microphone is a great way to start. And what's nice is, you know, you can really move those all throughout and capture more organic sound. I don't think anybody, I don't care who you are, if your live stream is just you and your built-in like phone mic, unless you're like, you know, really crushing it, it's not going to really engage people. We want that extra feeling of the sound to be nice and clean and organic. I think video does a pretty good job of putting us in the moment, but you need additional sound to really feel like you're part of that if you're a musician. So for me, a USB microphone is great. What I suggest though is I think more people should get audio interfaces. It's amazing how few people have an audio interface just to really expand what their computer can do. Like for me, I'm using a complete Audio 6 right now. Like, you know, just right now to talk through this, and you know, that was best $200 I ever spent. You know, I've like a bunch. I have a Behringer XR18, which I use for multi-track. I have an Allen Heath QRSB mixer, and these types of audio devices that connect through USB, I think open up a world of possibilities. I tell my students, if you want to be a music producer, music creator, get your computer and get your audio interface.
Okay, so I have a Behringer X32.
Nice.
If I wanted to use the Behringer X32 to go live as my audio interface, is that something that's possible?
Yeah, definitely possible. You know, you can USB out. The thing that really, the reality with like software like OBS is it's not really designed to communicate with the intricacies of that device. So you need to use the Behringer app to control it and do more. Usually in software like OBS, you really just can get your final stereo out.
Okay.
I believe OBS will communicate with 8 channels of any audio device, but it's limited. And so that's why I think for me, simpler is best.
Okay, so say I'm going through something like StreamYard.
Yep.
So I could use my Behringer X32 or something like that.
Yep.
To go in with a nice cleaner sound as opposed to going in direct and trying to use my phone speakers or my computer speaker or microphone, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could definitely work.
So the other question I have, and it's a 2-part question. Is it better for people to DIY their live stream videos with their band, acoustic show, etc., or to find an engineer / videographer like yourself? And then part 2 of that question is that lucrative for the band or can it be? And is that lucrative for you or can it be?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And that's something I think I'm still trying to make up my mind about. I wouldn't want to, it could be a whole business opportunity and a relationship and all the rest. I have to be honest, like I sometimes feel guilty because it's really not that, apart from maybe having the hardware, it's really not that difficult once you find a setup that works. So once, everything's plugged in, my job as a streamer is usually just pressing go and letting them do their part. So it's weird to like charge people for that. But again, it is kind of the use of the hardware. I think every artist should make their own decision with that. And I think I personally, if I'm scrolling through social media, I see somebody doing their own little live stream thing, I'm definitely going to check it out. I may not stay though as long as if it were a really good production. Sometimes though, if it's a really good production, I might not be as drawn to checking that out because it feels less organic. Balancing is the best thing to do. Not making your live stream overly like crazy and still having that communication effort. So I brought up a lot in this and just about, there's so many ways of approaching it. And I just really think the most important thing is that, it's visually engaging, but that there's a communication aspect to it. It's not just, hey, here's us playing last week and we recorded it and now we're putting it up on a live stream, quote unquote. Having it be like, here's us in this moment. We want to share a moment with you. And you think about how you want that moment to be. I would love to work with more artists and help them share that moment if they want a little bit more of a production value or just to help people. But also, I think we should set up some type of web page to offer ideas for anyone who wants to do it themselves, has the energy, has the vision, and a small budget to make it work.
Excellent. Love that. I have a statement and then one more question for myself. So what you were talking about was that sort of balance of having it feel natural versus overproduced. And this guy I worked with years ago, this guy, David Da Vinci, who used to live here in Vermont. Mm-hmm. David used to always say, Craig, if you're working on a track and you start producing, you're doing it all wrong. Stop producing. Just let it, be natural. Let it, whatever comes out that feels right, then you're not producing. So you can do something that feels magical, but it's organic as well. Yeah. So my last question there, and would be the Black Magic switcher, I believe we were talking about. What about the one that you had presented to us that made it clunky? What was it that made it so it was hard to use?
Yeah, I'm realizing looking back at my presentation overall, I definitely am sometimes contradicting myself and saying different things. And that's why this is a very contradictory, weird time. We're all
learning at the same time together,
we're
right?
all learning. But the things that are really, so I think this is just, in my experience, the best for its price and what it can do. I've seen a few local and beyond producers make really great stuff with this. What's clunky about a lot of them is how they actually communicate with your computer. Why this one's nice is it has a very clear USB-C out, and that's recognized as a video device in a lot of things. I think in the audio world, there's a lot of compatibility. You plug in almost any USB mic and your computer will recognize it. You might need a driver at the most. What's very weird in the video world is that is not always the case. It isn't just plug and play. Like the ATEM here, you actually need to set up like an IP address for it to be recognized in some streaming services. And, that stuff's out there. But even for me, I was a little bit scared, kind of like, oh my God, how do I set this up? But what is nice is OBS is starting to, with new updates, be plug and play with a lot of these. So the Blackmagic ATEM Mini here, can't speak it up enough because it is plug and play with OBS. So you invest in this $250 video switcher, go into OBS, which is free, and you can start plugging in cameras and streaming. But again, you still need to understand things like frame rate. You need to understand things like video quality and aspect ratios, things that are not taught in school, and things that I think we should make more clear to people. Not overly complicated, but are elements that you need to think about if you're live streaming.
Excellent. Shirley wants to know if we can do multi-platform festival live streaming that includes musicians, poets, comedians, filmmakers, writers like MTV, which is very similar to kind of what we did with Unfiltered Spirits.
Yeah.
I think but coming up soon, there's going to be Vermont Music Week and Make Music Day. And those are coming up in the spring. So look out for those, which would be very similar. I did have a conversation with Myra Flynn recently who wants to do something similar to that. So Shirley, please keep your eyes and ears open for more stuff like that.
Yeah, Bob had one last other really, really good last question here. How do you make things more interactive? I think, and how do you not oversaturate? I think keeping your streams relatively short. I think if you make if it's not a nice, unless maybe you're like some epic like DJ going on a journey. It's not realistic to have a 90-minute, 2-hour long stream and expect people to be holding their phone for 2 hours watching you. So keeping your streams short and during the stream, communicating to your audience are the biggest ways. It's a great point, Shirley. Hey, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. I hope this is helpful. The biggest point, though, I just wanted to offer a bunch of ideas all throughout, and I really hope people reach out. It's a year where a lot of people don't feel like reaching out to each other to work together, offer ideas. I really welcome anybody to hit me up, ask questions, let me know if I can help, and let me know if I can support you in any of your creative ideas.
No, this is great. This was very informative, and I thank you so much for being a part of this today. I mean, as a friend of yours for quite some time and collaborator of sorts, it's great to hear and see you do your thing. So thank you. And reminding folks that this is being recorded, and it is on YouTube and will be. It'll be replayed on Big Heavy World's The Radiator 105.9 FM. And then it will be sent off to folks who can hopefully make a difference in our lives as creative folks and gig-based folks the next time something like this happens, meaning COVID, etc.
Yeah,
So thank
cool.
you very much, my man, Matt.
Thank you.
Feel free to stick around if you'd like. Otherwise, we're going to take about 2 or 3 minutes just to let everyone who was here relax for a bit, go grab a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do. And then we'll restart this all over with Liz, who's waiting in the wings. Hello, Liz. I'm going to unmute you so I can say hello before we get started. That's to unmute.
Or I'll unmute myself. Hello.
There we go. I made you co-host, so you can do that now.
Awesome.
How are you?
Nice to see you. I'm great. Yeah. So everybody should just kind of take a break and I guess we'll come back. I know you've been busy for the morning. So
yeah, well, yeah, we had you said Matt, and yesterday was a nice full day. So today is a shorter one. You're closing us out with you and your guests, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for inviting all of the folks that are part of this. Now let you, once we get there, unmute them and we'll settle that. But I say we start at like 1:03. Well, I'm at 1 o'clock right now. How's that?
Sounds great. We'll be back. All right.
Perfect.
See you.
See you shortly.
Steven, did you see my note?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I saw it afterwards and I checked out the email afterwards. So
Yeah, no worries, no worries. It's a lot of this is being kind of pre-recorded as kind of an archival thing for should we ever find ourselves in this crazy position again. It's kind of like advice to creatives, you know, kind of just reflections on how to get through. And so they've had several different sessions, and we're closing out the little mini conference. So we may or may not have a lot of people on the call, but it's being recorded so that we can, you know, sort of share our experiences and hopefully help folks in future circumstances.
okay, perfect. Yeah, I saw we were in another session. I was like, okay, let me hop out real quick, and then I saw your message afterwards. Like, okay, let me hop back in.
I know. So I'll just see. It'll just be another minute, but I'll see you in a minute.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye. Yep.
All right, and I'm back. Hello, Liz. How are you? Let me mute you, Josh.
Hey.
All right. Everyone can say hello before we get started if you'd like. Everyone can unmute yourselves and then we'll mute up once we really get started. But hello to everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I'm Craig. I'm the host.
Hey, Craig. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. It's nice to see you virtually, even though it's now big old hugs virtually to all of you.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We had a great day yesterday and a great session this morning with Matt Bingino, and now I'm so excited that you all are helping to close this thing out. And I'm
super excited to be here, Craig. Thanks for reaching out. And hi, Jim. And I don't think I know Joshua. Are you part of the Big Heavy World crew as well?
I am pretty much. I used to be so there's a good history. I used to be a DJ for Big Heavy World as well, but that's a great question. But now I'm a sound DJ for Greg for his dance parties now, so it's a good opportunity to do that.
Fantastic.
So Joshua is my remote
We
engineer.
do not. Yeah, and we do not accept Joshua's resignation letter from Big Heavy. He's still part of it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Okay. I don't know who said that, actually. I just saw a big monkey on my
That's
screen.
Bob. That's Bob with my orangutan. And I do volunteer at Big Heavy too. So
excellent.
I'm
Hi,
also
Bob,
involved.
with the orangutan. All right. Nice to see you all. So, yeah, all
right, so I'll get us started.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm going to mute Joshua if you want. I'll mute you, and we'll get Bob muted. Okay, and everyone else is part of your presentation. So I have some stuff to some house cleaning stuff. But before we get started with this whole thing, I want to welcome everyone to our number 2 of day 2 of Art Mosh 1.0. I'm Craig Mitchell. I'm your host. And Big Heavy World was so excited to have you here. It's been a great couple days, and I'm excited for this last piece because it's a panel that I think a lot of folks will get a lot of education out of and possibly some entertainment out of. Before we get started, I want to remind you that we at Big Heavy World, as citizens of the United States and the state of Vermont, would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Abenaki people. This is being recorded. It will be on YouTube in perpetuity. We will be played on 105.9 The Radiator, BigHeavyWorld.com streaming as well. We'll let everyone know when that's going to happen. It will also be in the hands and ears of folks who can hopefully make a difference for us gig-based creative folks the next time something like this happens, meaning COVID. So our final presentation is being brought to you by Liz Sunday. And it's called Let Your Music Play, Caring for Your Artistic Self and Caring for Your Community During a Pandemic. The facilitator is Liz, co-founder and executive director of Music to Life. And Liz has invited some amazing artists, Amanda Pascali from Houston, Texas, Stephen Hernandez from Austin, Texas, and Miles Bullen from Portland, Maine. I hope I said your last name correctly. You can correct me afterwards. But with that said, Liz and your crew, the floor is yours.
Oh, Craig, thank you so much. Well, and thanks, Jim. And this is such a great way to kind of step into this world of Vermont where I have called home for 20 years. But we have been working nationally, for the most part. We do a little bit in Vermont, but it's just great to be able to bring our learning from this year and just be part of this. So, thank you so much. And I love that this is kind of archived as a touchstone for future generations. So I do think we will be sharing. You talked about education, Craig, and I do think, it's my hope that this will be helpful. I know that the artists that we're with tonight or today are. We're always with them at night, so I'm used to saying the artists we're with tonight. But I know this has been a real year for them, and I always say this, but I have felt so honored to be with them, and I'll share with you. So the part of the reason I've been able to be with them, I am not a musician myself, but as my dad says, I know where to find one. So my dad is, as some of you might know, Paul Stuckey of the folk trio Peter, Paul, and Mary. And I have chosen to make Vermont my home, but he and I have worked together nationally to create Music to to life as a national nonprofit to build activism through music, sort of building on the legacy of all that great 60s music and 60s activism and sort of bringing it into the modern day. And so, and one of the projects that we're most proud of, and frankly, that I think will be the foundation upon which we build for years to come, is something called our Activist Musician Accelerator. And this is a program that works with social change musicians who want to be change agents in their community. And so we connect them with the resources, the partners, the mentors they need to feel supported and again, to be connected and to take their vision for how they want to see change made in their community and go make it real. So that, and this, you know, here we are, it just, I mean, it is kind of a silver lining, and maybe, you know, Miles and Amelia, or Miles and, I was just on the phone with Amelia the other day, Miles and Amanda and Stephen, maybe you'll talk about this, but what a year for us to have instituted our very first Activist Musician Accelerator, right? Like all online, so that these guys could get that amazing support. So it's just the timing. I mean, we, you know, couldn't have planned it better. So I do want to let them each introduce themselves. And what I'm thinking about for an agenda here, and we'll have lots of, you know, discussion time and all that, but what I'm thinking about for an agenda here is kind of what we outlined in our description. So this notion, I want to sort of lay 3 questions on everybody as we go through here. This notion of, you know, how you've survived sort of creatively and socially through this pandemic. How you've managed to also kind of serve people in need, right, as this pandemic has sort of raged around us. And then what you're thinking about for moving forward, like how this past year and your work kind of balancing those 2 things, yourself creatively and your social change work, how that kind of now makes you think about sort of a post-COVID world, you know, sort of what the next phase might be. And the goal being, for those of you listening or watching in the future, hello. The idea here is for you guys watching to come away with kind of tips and tools to, you know, care for your creative self, right, as an artist, but also, you know, to figure out how you can care for those that you might be drawn to helping, right, in your community. So, let me start. Let's do a quick just a round of intros, you guys. Why don't we just go through and just quickly introduce yourselves. And then what I think I'll do is I'll just go through kind of question by question, you know, rather than having each of you answer all 3 questions together. I think let's just do kind of question by question. So, Miles, you want to get us started? Just sort of introduce yourself. We know you're from Portland, Maine. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Miles, and I'm sort of a musician, poet, gallivanting, teaching artist. Before COVID, I was full-time touring artist. I did 140 shows last year, traveling through 33 states and multiple countries. And this year I stayed at home. And yeah, I guess that's it for now.
All right, thanks, Miles. Stephen, you're the next in my window.
All right. My name is Stephen Hernandez. So originally I'm from Houston, Texas. I am now in Austin, Texas. And so I'm a music artist, also a teaching artist as well, working with students in middle school, high school, and even young adults as well, teaching positive outlets, literacy, and self-esteem through hip hop.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Amanda, where are you? I don't see you in my windows. There you are. Hi.
I'm right here. Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Pascali. I'm based in Houston, Texas, but I was born in New York City. I coined a genre for my music because it didn't quite fit in, American folk music, nor did it fit in world music. So I coined my own genre, which is called immigrant American folk music. It's too foreign for here, too foreign for home, and never enough for both. I'm an internationally touring singer-songwriter, bilingual singer-songwriter, and similar to what Miles said, I usually tour all over the world, but this year I stayed at home.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you very much, you guys. So let's go through, and I don't have to kind of keep going down the row here if you guys really want to, if you want to raise your hands and jump in first. But let's start by exploring survival here, sort of creative and social isolation, like how, just some thoughts about it. And just how has it been going? And Miles is such a great, part of what Miles does is what is that? If it hurts your healing, right, or something like that. Like Miles, you are just so like walk right through it, right? So so I guess I just feel free to sort of share just how crappy it's been too. Like we're not trying to paint a rosy picture here. We're like, this has been crappy, right?
Yeah.
So how you been dealing with the crap, right?
Well, all right, I'll start. At the end of January, I lost my grandfather. And at the end of February, I lost my father. And middle of March, I lost four of my, tours, 4 months worth of tour, which was not only all my income and my, which took 6 and 7 months before that to prepare. It's also my therapy. It's the way that I release, the things I'm going through. It's a very therapeutic practice for me. So I lost all of that by March and had to kind of reconsider everything. I had to, rewrite my life really quickly while grieving and while, personally grieving and globally grieving for the world. And so how I've been surviving, I feel fortunate. I don't think that, I think that there's a lot of folks, I know a lot of folks who don't have the sort of resources that I have as far as a community, people who love me. Like I have people who care about me no matter what. And through my life of, full-time job is meeting people. That's what I do. I connect with humans. I feel a lot of like almost guilt for being in a place where I'm cared about, because I know so many people who just don't have community. They don't have a sense of belonging. They don't have people checking in on them. I know a lot of people who don't even have places to live. There's a lot of unhoused folks in my community who are sleeping outside in the snowbanks right now. So a part of my survival is being grounded and grateful for the resources I have, and being creative and outreaching as much as I can, and being supportive, to others who have even less than I do. So that's been my way of coping with loss, is to find a place where I can give.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Miles, other folks, Amanda or Stephen, do you want to hop in on that?
I can go ahead. I think, Liz, you said before that you wanted us to tell you how crappy it is, that you don't want us to paint a rosy picture. Last night I was trying to prepare for this. It may sound silly because I guess it's just kind of a casual thing, but I was trying to prepare for this, and I was trying to think, like, what advice can I offer to somebody who's trying to keep their positivity during a time that's really hard for artists. And you also said something, you said, tell us how you're getting through the crap. And I think the first thing that I want to say is sometimes you don't. And like some days, you can't notice it. Like at the beginning of this whole thing, it was my last semester of college. And so all my classes got switched to online. I didn't have a graduation ceremony. And so, initially I was like, oh, it's fine. I'm not fazed by it. I can do this. It doesn't matter, and by the time the summer comes and my, it's going to be time for my European tour, this is all going to be over for sure. And I kind of like prided myself on how tough I could be. And I think that what I didn't know was that there were a lot of feelings that were being pushed down. And then some days you just realize, like, I'm actually not okay, you know, and I didn't take the time to reflect on that. So I guess some advice that I would give people is that artists are feeling people. Like, we have emotions and we feel sad, and there are people that have it worse than us. But that doesn't mean that it's not okay to be upset about it. And that doesn't mean that feeling upset about it isn't valid. So if you need to take a moment and feel upset about something, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're ungrateful, you know? So I guess one thing for me is, you know, knowing that I have people that I can be around, that I can openly feel around, and that they don't judge me for that. I feel like that has gotten me through it a lot.
Yeah, that's lovely. I totally get that. I totally get that. Yeah, Stephen, you hopped off. Are you okay now? You're back on. Did you want
Yeah,
to?
I'm not exactly sure what happened. My computer just kicked me out real quick.
Anyway,
But yeah,
so,
I'm back. So yeah, so similar. I mean, as I'm sure everyone in the world has been affected by COVID, obviously. So I was doing a lot of speaking at schools and universities and things like that. And then when COVID hit, and then also was doing rideshare. A big part of my income was rideshare. And so when that hit, we transitioned from me working full time to me being a stay at home dad. And so that's been a great thing, but it's also been very challenging because just with all the different things that come with society and the different men versus women roles and household and things like that. So typical men used to think, oh man, the woman that stays home, like, what did you do all day? Right? It's like the house is a mess, the food's there, but what's going on? And so now I'm that person. And so, sometimes my wife, so thankfully she's been able to go work, start working full time because she was working part time. And so now she's like, what did you do all day? Right? Like the kids are a mess. They're still in your pajamas. The house is a mess, And so that has been it's been a challenge because just so I've been doing homeschool because of sending kids to go to school. So I'm the homeschool dad, but then I'm also disciplined dad, and I also cook, make breakfast, lunch, dinner. And I don't, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what am I making today? I've been making potatoes for the whole week. And then so caring for them, they wake up around like 7 and then they go to sleep around 7:30. And then I'm like, okay, now I got some time for myself. And now I want to work on my music, but I'm just too tired. Like I just want to rest and not. So it's been like really a balancing act, trying to figure out, okay, how do I self-care? But then also I have my son and daughter that I got to care for. And then I also have to care about my wife because she needs time too. And so there's all these other emotions. And then obviously my family's all in Houston. And so they got hit with COVID like bad, same thing as here. And so my brother got it. My sister-in-law, she has been fighting cancer for the past 5 years. She had it. And thankfully they're okay. And just like one person after another. And it's like, the worries, the anxiety, everything just kind of it's constant. It's like, okay, help me to be a leader, help me to be, but then also care about myself because I can't carry all this weight and not care about myself because then I'm going to, because a few years ago, I dealt with depression, like very bad, like suicidal thoughts, depression. And I was like, okay, I can't go back into that, which a lot of people are experiencing, especially in the holidays. Like, how do I fight those emotions? And so like very much like Miles was saying, like music is my therapy, but I don't have time to do my therapy. So I'm just pushing these emotions down as much as I can, but trying to put on that happy face, right? Like I always do vlogs. Like, so vlogging is something that I do, just hanging out with the kids. We do projects. Right now we're doing like a gingerbread man thing right now before we got on. And so I'm like, okay, I need to stay in the moment. I think staying in the moment is important because I get on my Facebook and I get on my Instagram and I'm posting all these pictures, but even when I was going through that depression, I was like, I'm posting all these things. And we went to like a bunch of trips. We went to Thailand, California, and Florida, all in the same year, just as family vacations, because I was doing Uber and Lyft and I had more time. But at the same time, my marriage was under so much pressure. Like my marriage is like just falling apart. And it's like, it's fake. Y'all see this, but it's fake. And so now I'm kind of like, okay, I need to stay in the moment, because these, it was hard, trying to teach my kids, but at the same time, I'm like, wow, I'm never gonna have these moments again with them. I'm never gonna have this time again with them. So let me stay in the moment, and maybe I don't capture that video, maybe I don't capture that picture, but I remember it, and they remember it, and that's kind of been the best thing. Is just trying to stay in the moment and say, okay, tomorrow I don't know what's gonna happen. Yesterday sucked, but today I have to take care of today. I have to look at today, because how I treat or how I don't treat my son and daughter, they're gonna keep those memories, and they're gonna remember. I remember when Dad was busy, and he was on he was doing his videos, and I was playing by myself. And one of the biggest things that my kids always ask us, Daddy, will you play with me? Hold on, I'm busy. I got to do this project. Hold on, I'm busy in 5 minutes. And so just even as I'm talking about it, I'm like, I have to. That's the most important thing. We say it's the most important thing. We say it is, but is it really? I'm working because I want to provide for them, but at the same time, am I going to spend that time with them? So it's that balancing act. And so right now, my biggest job has been doing video editing. I've been doing a lot of videos for a lot of people, Saul Paul included, and all these like, but at the same time, I have to say, okay, but my art is important as well. So I need to take time to do my art as well. So it's been a real balancing, juggling act. But I think as Amanda was saying and Miles was saying, is having those people to say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. I have a lot of Christian friends. I'm in the Christian faith. And we say, oh, I'm blessed, too blessed to be stressed. Like, no, how are you doing? How are you really doing? And asking other people as well, how are you doing? Like, I don't care about what the Instagram says. I don't care what Facebook says. How are you doing? Because it's important. So, yeah.
Ooh, thanks, Stephen, for sharing. Wow. You know, what went through my head, certainly as you were talking, and, you know, Amanda and Miles, as you were talking, is like, do you feel kind of profoundly changed? Like, has this year been one of these where you have now, either in your outlook or your approach or how you ground yourself, is there something now that just hasn't been there before that is here now because of this? So that's a question that came up, and maybe we should just put there, like, there's so many things coming up for me hearing you, and I've been with you, for this whole year, but that just, every conversation exchange is another opportunity to learn something. So there's that I'm putting over here, because I also am once again so amazed that you have been able to balance and manage this circumstance and give back to your communities, because I've seen it. As I was mentioning, these guys have been in this project where we've been really sort of encouraging them and nurturing their kind of community-oriented work, right? This, Stephen, you're just like, how are you enough for anyone, right? So I just wonder how you've been able to, so let's come back to the how you have profoundly changed, and let's just think for a minute. I'd love to get your thoughts on sort of how have you managed to balance, because you all, and maybe that's the thing, is you all operate right from the heart, and you all operate right from the kind of, in service, you are in service people, right? So maybe that's how, but how do you do it? So how do you do it how have you done the community thing? I've watched you do it, but how have you, I'm curious about your reflections. So Stephen, I'll switch over to maybe, Amanda or Miles, if you want to start, and we'll come back to you for that question. So.
Sure, I can check in. At the beginning of the quarantine lifestyle, I was reached out to a community. There's a recovery community where it's like a treatment center, but it's also it's sort of like an education program that folks in recovery can go to, and they can get treatment, and then they take courses and kind of build in like skill-based therapeutic practices into their recovery program. And I've known this guy Jeremy for a few years now, and he reached out to me at the beginning of the quarantine and was like, "Hey, I would love for you to teach a writing workshop as a part of this recovery program," because I'm a person in recovery myself. I'd had, you know, I've lived with I've lived with addicts my whole life. You know, my family and friends were all, you know, victims of substance use abuse, and so I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And I started it in March, and I still do it. I teach 2 creative writing workshops every single week to this recovery center. It's like a private group, you know, with folks, and that was just me saying yes. Like, I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to sleep for 5 months. I hated myself. I was sad and depressed, and I had an identity crisis. I didn't know who I was. I didn't feel like myself. I wasn't doing the things I do. I wasn't being the person I am. But I said yes. I said, okay, I'll do this, you know? And now it's something I look forward to every week. You know, after just doing it every single week, it's a part of my ritual. It's a part of my practice. It's like a healthy habit that got placed into my day, into my calendar. And then, you know, it started with 1, and then it moved to 2. And then I have a friend who has like a community art space who was like, "Hey, would you teach a workshop here?" I was like, "Sure." So now I do that one too. And then random live stream events for different charities, I've been doing just lots of in-service things for mental health workshops. I did a show for this college group called Active Minds, and they focus on mental health and bringing mental health into schools. And I did a performance for them. It's just like, I just kept saying yes to things when I had no ambition and no strength at all. My weakest, lowest point of my life. But somehow people were reaching out and asking things from me, and by saying yes, it empowered me and it gave me strength. So even though I was doing work, the work was much more for me than I knew it was going to be. Like, I didn't know that saying yes to all these things was going to really affect my life this much. Because in the past, I'd say yes to stuff because I'm like, oh, I need to work. I need to make money. I need to connect to people. I'm a hustler. I'm going. I'm going. I'm going to do a show every single day if I can. But I was not that this year. This year I was in my bed, curtains closed, sleeping as much as possible. And then when people asked me things, I felt like it was bringing me back to life.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thoughts, Amanda, on your kind of your capacity to kind of connect with community through all this?
Yeah, so I'm a really stubborn person. I don't know if it's because I've been given a lot of privilege, I think, because when my parents came to the US, they had absolutely nothing. And so they worked hard and made a lot of sacrifices to save up enough money to go to school and have a family and provide things for me, and encourage me to pursue art and music and, have instruments and not have to worry about taking care of my sisters. Instead, I could concentrate on writing songs and doing other things like that. So I think growing up like that, being able to have a lot of things, has made me very stubborn. And so I decided from a young age that music was what I was born to do, because I could see the joy on other people's faces whenever I played for them. And so since I was little, I've had this dream of making even more people happy with my music and thinking, this is what I was born to do. This is the universal language. And if I have relatives in other countries across the world that are watching me and proud of me because I can create beautiful music that transcends borders, then this is what I was born to do. So for me, coming out of college, getting ready to go on a big tour and then having that taken away from me being a very stubborn person, I didn't buy an audio interface. I didn't buy a special live stream microphone. I didn't do any of that because that wasn't good enough for me. That's not what I'm born to do. I'm born to be a musician, but not to my camera, to real people, to people who are going to give me hugs and tell me about how I'm a great role model for their daughter, and things like that. So when all of this happened, I didn't try to pivot and become a live stream musician. Instead, I said, right now, because I'm stubborn, my dreams are not going to happen, but that doesn't mean that other people's dreams can't happen. And so that was the moment that I was like, if I can't make myself happy, I'm going to try to make something happen for somebody else. And so I started doing my work with the immigrant community in Houston, albeit virtual. And I was in a online ESL class, like a Zoom ESL class, because I was working with an ESL teacher. And she said, Amanda, today's lesson, I made it a lesson about one of your songs. And so there's a song that I wrote about, wanting to grow up and make your family feel proud of you because you've really done something with your life and you've become someone important and made an impact on a lot of people. And the song is called Give Me a Hero. And so she crafted this lesson about my song, Give Me a Hero. And she asked the class, what does it mean to be a hero to you? And the class was, it was a very small class, and it was all girls, and they were all from Mexico. And so they wrote down in their like journals what it means to be a hero, and started speaking out loud to practice their English, telling me what it means to them to be a hero. And then I played the song for them. And, I think especially the fact that they were girls and they were close to my age, just like really made me feel like, if I'm not doing music, if I'm not doing performing and traveling all over the world, which is what I was born to do, this is the next thing, because I was making something happen for somebody else. And I think they were able to be vulnerable with me and not worry about me, because language learning is a two-way street. There's the way of them trying to speak to you, but then also the way of you making the effort to understand them. And I was making that effort to understand them. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, for me, similar to what Miles said, I started saying yes to things that I didn't really necessarily seem like I wanted to do at the beginning, because I did want to sleep as well and just wait for everything to be over. But then at the same time, I started saying yes to things, and things like this happened. And so I'm not a live stream musician, and I'm not doing a lot of live stream shows or trying to make the virtual thing happen. I've kind of put my dreams on hold. And while that's on hold, I'm focusing on other people's dreams.
Yeah, that's lovely, Amanda. Yeah, all right. I'm so, woo. I sort of, yeah, there's so much to be taken in here. And what is kind of space when we're in this virtual world, right? Like, I feel like we've suddenly, just with all of your vulnerability and sharing and openness, we have just kind of dived into this amazing space right now. So I'm sort of, on the one hand, just trying to honor that space while also moving us along so that each of you can share. So please know that I'm taking this in, and obviously we're recording this, and it's just, I think it's going to be very comforting and helpful, I think, to people who watch this as we move forward. But Stephen, I want to give you a chance to share as well.
Yeah. a few things come to mind. One, I just want to say thank you to Amanda. Every time I hear her talk about doing something amazing in Houston, especially with immigrants, it always just touches my heart, because I wish that I could be back in Houston doing more for, you know, them. But it's good. It's an extension, but still, yeah. So I appreciate that. One of the things that really helped me was Music to Life, to be honest. Like, I'm not trying to just put a plug out there, but it really was, because we had those meetings monthly, and then also we had those check-ins, and those were just great opportunities for me to hear other people, for me to hear and learn, and to listen, and then also to share, like, how are we doing, what's going on, what's new. And I look forward to those meetings. I had a lot of, especially when COVID just hit, I had a lot of meetings online, and I was just like, oh, another one. But these were the ones where I'm like, this gives me life. These are those meetings. These are those people that I'm talking to that gives me life. The connections that I made with Sasha and Letty and others, and just Kamika and Amanda, like, just those gave me life, because we're all fighting. We're artists. We're all fighting to make the world as best as we can. And we're all struggling. Maybe we're having some, you know, some ups, some achievements, some goals, some accomplishments, and then we're also having some real lows. Or, you know, we're trying to get some grants, and we're like, I don't know how to write this. I write music, I don't write this. And then we struggle, and then we get a no. And we're like, man, I spent so much time on that. I could have wrote a song or something important. So just sharing that, having people to know, because I think one of the things, especially all of us, as we talk about, especially when we deal with depression and those emotions, is that we feel we're the only one going through it. And it's a lie. It's a lie, but it's a strong lie that we almost believe, because it makes us feel like, hey, I can have pity on myself. And I'm more of a homebody. Even though I love performing and speaking and rapping and things like that, I'm more of an introvert. So being at home all day was great for me. I'm like, okay, cool. I can stay at home. I can watch, and I have a reason for watching stuff on YouTube, and you know, just not going out, not having to interact with a lot of people in the outside world. That was okay for me, because I'm kind of an introvert. I'm becoming an ambivert just because I have to, out of necessity. But and then I think we might get to it a little bit later, but you were asking about, so there's this gentleman named Jordan Peterson. Some people love him, some hate him, but he gave an analogy, which is from the movie Pinocchio. Pinocchio wants to be a real boy, and there's a part where his dad, or his puppet master, gets eaten by a whale. He's swallowed by a whale, and Pinocchio has to look inside of himself and to become something different. So when we encounter things that are too difficult for us, that are too hard for us, our DNA actually changes, and we become something different, because the person that I am today, or that I was last year, was not capable of dealing with the 2020 events and issues, and dad and husband and home and all these things that I'm dealing with. So we actually become different people. We become a better version of ourselves as we go through that. And I know for myself, I hated conflict. I don't like conflict. And then I also don't like problems. I just want to be comfortable. But learning to embrace these difficulties, as Miles and Amanda said, learning to say, yes, I don't feel like it, do it anyway. You don't feel like it, do it anyway. And when you do that anyway, you actually become a better version of yourself, because we're experiencing conflict. We're experiencing this pressure, just like diamonds, just like all these beautiful things, just like pearls. They're found in the deep areas of the earth, of the sea. And it's that pressure that makes it something beautiful, worthwhile having. And so so having those conversations with people that are struggling, not just, because sometimes when I have conversation with people that are just doing great all the time, I'm like, I don't want to be around you, because I'm not doing great. So I need you to leave. But when I'm having with people that are, I guess I consider myself a realist, like, yeah, it was good, but this is what's bad. And then I say, okay, but we can make it. We can make it. I get that hope. And then we encourage each other. And then, in a sense, like everyone else was saying, that when I give, when I serve, when I give to other people, then it gives me life as well. So I'll kind of keep it short there.
Oh, that's very, very well said, Stephen. Really well said, all of you. I'm thinking maybe we'll just pause for a moment and just see if there are questions. I know we just have a few folks online with us at the moment, but I do want to make sure, like, Craig, I know we talked about having some Q&A. So I mean, clearly you all have a lot to say, but I also want to see if there's anybody out there who, is really curious to tap your insights in a different kind of way. So.
Well, I want to just jump in real quick before we move on to other topics, if we get there, and thank Miles, Stephen, and Amanda for sharing such personal stuff. As someone who has been there, I understand. And I think folks need to hear that it's not okay to just say everything's great. That's not okay, because that just pushes it down further. Being able to be honest with yourself and honest with others, especially as a creative person, when you can't get out there and get on stage, you can't get in the DJ booth, you can't put on your dance shoes and go out and dance. That's hard. Or you're doing it in your living room, or you're doing it in front of a camera, as Amanda said. That's hard because the people aren't there. You want that hug, you want that validation, and that's what makes your art better in some aspects, when you're bouncing stuff off of other people. I do have a question, though, that pivots back to music, but before I get there, I want to let folks know who are listening or watching, being that we've talked about some heavy stuff here, and I hope that it resonated with the folks that needed to hear this stuff. And to the folks that are looking for an outlet, please remember that there is a suicide prevention lifeline, they call it. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Really important to get that out there to folks if they're feeling that they need some other support. So with that said, are you excited, or are you creating music? Excited to create music? And if you are making music right now, is it different than when you were making before? And has COVID been a deterrent to that, or has it made it you more creative? That's several different questions all at once. I guess I'll let Liz, you can sort of pick who goes first.
Oh no, whoever wants to go, that's fine. No, who wants to jump in on that, it's fine.
I'll jump in. I had been just full-time doing shows as much as possible before this. So I think I wrote more music this year than I have in years. Part of that is because I do, creative writing workshops every single week. So it's like, even if I'm writing a bunch of terrible things, like junk, I have so much of it, right? It's like, it's like you got to write it's like the old, like Bob Dylan, sort of metaphor is you got to write 1,000 bad songs before you make a hit. So I think I wrote my 1,000 bad songs this year. But within that, the practice of just writing again more often, whether I love it or not, has made it easier. It's made it so much easier to create, because I've built in something into my schedule that is a routine. So now every week I have to write, whether I'm tired or anxious or happy or sad. No matter what, I'm gonna write because I have the time there. And I have people who are holding me accountable. I have a whole group of people who are just there with me writing. So I've been more creative with coming up with new music. I put out an album at the beginning of December called Healing Hurts, and that kind of wraps up a lot of the things I was talking to you guys about. And it's a very different album. It's not it's an evolution of things that I've done before, but it's mostly it's probably the most raw and vulnerable and personal thing I've ever made.
Miles, if I can jump in, was it
Sure.
a change of genre for you when you did the pivot to talking about the Healing Hurts, or are you still doing what you were doing before, but just more emotional?
Yeah, I would say it's a slight pivot of genre. It's kind of an amalgamation of kind of folky acoustic music with some hip hop, with some kind of spoken word, and then with this angsty punk rock feel as well. It's kind of all those things jumbled up, and the themes are heavy. It's like heavy stuff, but in a or a friend of mine used to say, it's like having a hard truth in a soft container.
I love that.
Yeah.
I sometimes go to something that supports me in my being depressed, not necessarily depression, but I want to not be alone in my tears. And a great band for me is this band called Red House Painters. Not sure if you know them, but they have an amazing album called Songs for a Blue Guitar. And whenever I'm feeling depressed, yes, I'm not by myself, and I'll just sit and cry in the corner. And then after it's all over, I feel better.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think the difference on that's amazing. The difference in my mindset on making this record as to before is before I was writing about the same things. I was still writing about grief. I was still writing about depression and anxiety and social justice and, you know, prison reform and all of these things and racism. I've been talking about these things for a decade, right? But the difference now is this is the first time I wrote from a very vulnerable place, an uncertain place, a place where I don't know the answers. Whereas before, when you're confident, when you're like living in this thing, you're like, yes, I know these things are there and everything's going to be all right. And I'm sure of it. I didn't have any sureness at all on this record. And I think that's possibly the strongest part of it, you know, is that I came from this, it's still optimistic. It's still hopeful, but it's very uncertain. I don't know what this feeling is and how I'm going to get through it. But this is my like auditioning, like trying it out. I'm really just trying it out and I don't know what's going to happen. So that's where my music went this year. And for better or worse, it was more of a thing for me anyways, you know, realizing I can't tour. It's like, who puts out an album right now? Like, what's the point of putting out an album? Like, that's crazy to put out an album for someone like me who, like, 90% of the people who listen to me are people who see me in person. And so I already had a bad odds of, like, trying to make a hit record. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make the most realistic thing I can. And it's not going to be a pop album. It's not going to be for everyone. But I think I made the most honest piece of art that I've been able to make because of this year, because I had time. I wasn't busy. I was here with myself and my instruments and my experience. So I had to capture it. And I wouldn't have had the time to do this. Even with all the grief and all the things I dealt with, I was going to go on tour. I was ready. You know, there, like 3 days after my dad dies, I did a show. I went to do performances through it all, and I would have just shoved down all the grief if I didn't have this outlined time to just be with myself.
And I'll just add sort of the courage and the bravery to be with yourself in that way, because right? I mean, as opposed to going in all kinds of other directions to find ways to kind of stuff it down or deny it or not look at it. So, yeah. I want to check in actually with you, Craig, because I know it's 10 of 2, and I'd love to hear some thoughts from Stephen and Amanda, and I'd love to close, with just kind of maybe some tips and tools or some really sort of practical ways for artists to kind of move forward and balance this kind of, their own creativity with their giving back. And so what do you tell me about our time?
I mean, if we go a little bit over, I'm okay with that. If you're okay with that, I mean, I'm really appreciative of the conversation we're having right now. And I think a lot of folks, this is necessary. So wherever we go and wherever we end, I think it's okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
There was something from Bob. I don't know if you want to read that.
Oh, there is. Oh, great. Okay. Bob says, first, thank you all for sharing. 2020 has created an opportunity for people to listen differently about issues that have been here all along. So how do we keep that going in a hopefully post-pandemic world? And I'll just add, yeah, I mean, let's by all means, how do we keep that going? And I know that, again, one of the things that Music to Life is trying to do is how do we sort of deepen impact on the issues by kind of rolling up our sleeves around these issues too, as musicians have really done, as part of this. So Yeah, I mean, anyone want to, that's great, Bob. Thank you. That's the kind of question that I actually really wanted to sort of end on. But how, anybody want to jump in? Yes, Stephen, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I can share, and I think it's kind of what a little bit what I was sharing earlier is that, so 2020 has been, obviously one of the craziest years I've ever experienced, but there's also been these unique opportunities. So again, with the shutting down of a lot of things, like, so again, I'm very heavily into the faith. Like, if it wasn't for that, I would be dead or in jail. And so there was a shutdown of churches. And so most of people say, oh, it's a bad thing, but it made me appreciate. So I think 2020 has made us really appreciate certain things that are not that important. There's certain things that are not that important. Again, social status and all this other stuff, but then also like having church in my home and just hanging out with my kids and spending time with them and just having that experience is so important versus us going to a church. They go to children's church, we go to adult church, and we're separate. We don't experience how, when I'm singing songs or I'm having a moment or I'm just reflecting, and they never experience that. But when I'm at home, they can experience that with me. When I'm at home, they can see, oh, this is what daddy does. Oh, this is how daddy, and so I think those things are important. So I think what keeps us and helps us to keep that hope alive is focus on right now, focus on today. We prepare for tomorrow. We don't want to just, you only live once and just blow it all, but live in the moment and enjoy this moment. And to 9/11, 2019, I lost my dad, and he was an alcoholic. He wasn't there for my graduation. He was there briefly for when I got married and things like that. And I just always reflect back on his life with us and in my life with my kids. And I remember one of my earliest memories, I remember like he loved the Three Stooges, and I'll forever remember that. Well, I'll forever remember that. And then obviously I have some bad times. And so I'm like, okay, let me live in the moment. Let me enjoy this moment. And if I pass away, let's say, unfortunate events happen, I want my kids to remember these good times. Yeah, it's gonna be sad, it's gonna be sorrowful, they're gonna be sad, but they're gonna remember. I remember when my dad did this. I remember, and so as I think I forget your name. I'm sorry. You were saying about like what my genre switching. I've been making a lot more kids songs, just like freestyling with my kids, and they're watching TV, and so my daughter and my son are like kind of like freestyling and coming up with songs and rapping, and so things like that. So just how can we make today? So my whole brand is do something great, and my website is do something great.today. Because we always think I have to get that degree, I have to achieve this, I have to sell that, I have to do this, and then I'm great. Like, no, do something great today. Let's embody today. Let's take today, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But if we focus on, because a lot of my friends, they're worried about what's going to happen. They were worried about the election. They're worried about COVID. They're worried about all these things. And I'm like, all you're doing is worrying. You're not enjoying today. So focus on today and let's take care of what we can, and then the other stuff we prepare for. But we that's no way to live. That's not living.
I mean, I think the other thing you're saying there is that sort of attitude of gratitude also, which I've sort of heard come through here. How can you look around and be appreciative for what you have? Yeah, so I think about that Cat Stevens song. If I ever lose my legs, I won't moan and I won't beg. If I ever lose my legs, I just won't have to walk anymore. Whatever. Like, it's this great, I can't remember what the title is. If I ever lose my teeth. I mean, he goes through this whole thing. And it's all about, how are you going to be grateful for what you have? So anyway, but in the end, I want to give you a chance to respond to anything really we've been sort of sharing, but Bob's question is kind of this, how do we keep going? And of course, I'm always curious about the, giving back piece to what you guys have all been doing, but how do we keep going in a post-pandemic kind of world?
I don't know. Like, I don't know what the answer to that is. I think that, so when Bob wrote, 2020 has created an opportunity for people to listen differently about issues that have been here all along. I think a lot of that is due to social media, because whereas before we were kind of, everybody was kind of spread out in their own circles. I think now we've kind of like converged to going to one place where we can talk to people, which is on social media. And I guess social media provides a platform to talk about issues that have been here all along, but now that we're in this time period where we have a lot of like very advanced technology, we have videos of things that are happening, and like posters or graphics that we can share. So I think we're more connected to what's going on than we were before. Like I think a lot of people say that 2020 was a really bad year because a lot of bad things happened, which is true. But also, we're increasingly moving into a time period where we are knowing about the bad things faster because we have a lot of good technology. And so I don't know how we keep that going into a post-pandemic world. I hope that that would solve itself. I hope that 2020 creates such a lasting impression on us that we permanently change our way of listening to things, listening to others, listening to marginalized people, because I don't want us to forget 2020, and maybe we won't. So yeah, I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, but and yet you shared many interesting perspectives on that question. So thank you for that, Amanda. I mean, we're actually, as it turns out, we're just about at 2:00. So what do you think?
We're getting close. I guess I'd open it up to a couple more questions if folks have things they'd like to ask. But one thing I want to touch on with Amanda, I think that is really important. And at least now, with all of us being sort of shut in, so to speak, we have the time to sit and watch and pay attention to what others have been saying for years. Like I've been hated on, or I get called names, or I get looked at, and I think Dave Chappelle put it perfectly. And I also had a conversation with Patrick Leahy, senator here from Vermont, for a special I did for VPR, and it was in May, and we're all sitting home, we're all scared, we're getting all this information given to us that we didn't have the time to pay attention to before, and then we watch a man die for 8 minutes and 46 seconds on our television. Every single one of us watched that and finally said, oh my God, people weren't lying. This is really happening. This is the truth. So I think that the positive of those horrible things, as John Lewis told to Patrick Leahy, there's necessary evil. When John Lewis walked across the bridge, the Norman Pettus Bridge years ago, if the wind hadn't blown just right, because the police officers had put out smoke bombs so that the TV cameras couldn't see them being beaten and the dogs biting them and them being shot. If the wind hadn't blown just right and moved the smoke away, the world would not have seen John Lewis get beat on the head, and civil rights for voting may have not happened. Sadly, George Floyd lost his life. And so with that said, at least we know where the monster is and that the monster exists, and hopefully we can tackle that. And I'm really excited, and it's sort of pivoting back to music. I'm excited to hear what folks are going to come out with at the end of this. I'm sure there's going to be some amazing, depressing, but also cathartic music through this whole project of our life. And I'm calling it a project, but that's what it is, because we don't know. We're all still figuring it out. And as one person said, who I had as part of a presentation I did, the young people are watching us flounder. And when this happens again, because it will, they'll know what to do, because we gave them the roadmap. They saw us fall down and get back up and keep trying to fix things to the point where we are where we are now, and hopefully getting better as we go into 2021. So I don't know where you'd like to leave it. I'd like to, if folks have one more question, or if folks have one more thing they'd like to end with, if Miles would like to talk about the Ellen fish behind his head on his piano there, or Amanda, a book that's your favorite book right now, whatever you'd like to close with. I don't know if the fish from Little Mermaid is inspirational, but I'd love to hear that if it is.
No, it was a prop for a music video I did though. I did a music video in a grocery store, and you know those like the scale that like hangs from the chains next to the produce. I put it in the scale, so like going around the produce, there's just a random fish in there.
Awesome, love it.
That's a great video, by the way. I am not
For
I am
everyone.
not for everyone. I am
Yeah.
not for everyone. Yeah. One of the thoughts I had, Craig, is there a chance to, I mean, yeah, I'd love folks to be able to explore more about our accelerator. I'd love folks to get to know Miles and Amanda and Stephen better. Will there be an opportunity to share, socials and
I would love for them
information?
to, and if they'd like to put them in the chat right now, maybe
Great.
say your social stuff as we close, so that when people are watching this later or listening
Great.
To the radio or online, they can get in touch with you later on and hear your music, but also reach out if they need to. So
Sounds
maybe
good.
I guess start with Miles and then move along the line.
Sure, yeah, you can just Google my name. That's Miles Bullen. You can see it. It's right on the screen. Yeah, you can go anywhere you want to consume art or music. There's a spot for you on the internet with my name attached to it.
Awesome.
It's true. And Amanda, so was that a good prompt in terms of what's behind you, a book prompt, or is there something else around you you'd like to hold up and show us?
Oh, well, so my dad was a professor, and so that's why there are a bunch of books behind me. They're not mine. I do read a lot. In fact, I just got finished yesterday indexing and proofreading a book about Dante in Italian for one of my former professors, but these are not my books. I just like this space because it motivates me to read a little bit more, listen a little bit more, and talk a little bit less, I guess.
Sounds good. Stephen, any final totem or something either in your background or just something on your mind to share?
So I wish I was kind of listening to the last part, and then for some reason my computer kicked me out again. It's the year of uncertainty, but it's also the year for us to rise up. I think really like for us to look at fear in the face and not let it stop us. But also I put mine in the website, do something great in the chat box, do something great today, and then do something great today for Instagram as well. You can find all the other stuff. But I really appreciate this opportunity to share and speak with the other artists as well.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And I guess I'll say too, these are, it's kind of funny to say this, but having worked now with these artists and 7 others around the country, we now are building a national network of activist musicians. And so part of this coming year will be, connecting Stephen, Amanda, and Miles with other aspiring social change artists. So creating opportunities for them to be mentors, creating opportunities for them to keep going with their own projects and, connecting them with ongoing learning. And then, we have dreams of conferences and, sort of other, and frankly, sort of case studies, around the country. How is music, how are musicians everywhere kind of stepping off the stage and into activism, and how can we be supportive of them? And so I really just encourage you to keep in touch with musictolife.org. We have all kinds of stuff coming up in 21, and just so honored to be kind of a facilitator of this sort of process of music and activism. So
thank you so much. Before we finish, I'd like you to read the last comment in the chat.
Me?
Yes, Liz.
Okay. This is from Shirley Reed. Thank you. I've been isolated. You've been inspiring.
So that's a great way to end today. And in these 2 days of Art Mosh 1.0, brought to you by Big Heavy World. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Miles. Thank you, Amanda and Stephen. again, so inspiring and so raw and open. And that's I don't know if the pandemic helped to bring that all out, but I'm grateful for you and your words and your solidarity and with folks who are going through some of the same stuff. It's really important work that you're doing by just speaking. So thank you so much. I want to remind everyone that these sessions will be on bigheavyworld.com streaming soon, as well as 105.9 FM, The Radiator, as well as on the Big Heavy World YouTube site soon. And then these will be going to folks who can hopefully make sure that our lives are a little bit better the next time that something like this happens, because it will. So with that said, thank you so much, and we'll see you in 2021. Take care.
So long, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. See you tonight, Josh.
See you tonight, bro.
Love it. Take care.
You too, bud.